Well, hello and thanks once again all my vintage dirt bike YouTubers for tuning in to Classic Dirt Bike TV. Now firstly, a big thanks to all of you for helping me break the 10,000 subscribers total, and I hope you'll all stay with me as we head towards the next 10,000 subscribers. Now just recently I've been able to get out and about and capture more of those off-road classics, and this next bike is the first machine that I filmed in over 8 months since the COVID lockdown here in Scotland. So I do hope you'll hang around for the next few minutes as we take a look at a very nice 1978 440 Maico Magnum. Now this featured bike, as you can see, has undergone a full restoration, although the bike hasn't been put back to its original 1978 specification, but has been restored to be used as a day-to-day full-on race bike. Now there are a few non-original parts on this bike, and that's the reason that we could never class this bike as an original. This bike was never meant to be restored to its original condition, so we would appreciate if viewers wouldn't comment saying that these 78 Magnums never had gold wheels, or these 78 Magnums never had alloy tailpipes. This is not an original bike. It was purely restored to be used as a race bike and nothing more. Right, so anyway, rant over. Now this 78 440 started its life as an older, battered old Maico, and when the bike's new owner, Stewart Roden, took possession of the bike, he wanted to make a decent job of rebuilding it, but it wasn't meant to be a concourse trophy winner, but he just wanted to build a decent, reliable racing machine. But essentially the bike had undergone a full strip down by Stewart, and the frame, the swing arm and the fork legs and the front and rear brake back plates were painted in this lovely, almost Ferrari like colour of red. Now the engine is a 440 piston port 2-stroke motor, and I have to say that these 440 Maico power plants are just a sweet engine, as I had a similar motor to this in my old Maico race bike back in the day. Now these were much more user friendly than their bigger brother, the 490, and they're certainly not as fiery, but they're just a nice smooth engine with a lovely spread of power that's not arm wrenching but very manageable. But this particular 440 motor was the one part that Stewart never really had a hand in restoring. Stewart left that to the Maico master, Paul Chiappa from Dunfermline Motorcycles, who is regarded as the Maico expert when it comes to these German engines. Now of course a lot of the plaudits for producing that smooth power delivery for these Maico motors go to these big 54 Bing carburetors. Now these are certainly not the most sophisticated when it comes to mixing fuel with air, but they are simplistic in their design, and when these are jetted and set up correctly, they are every bit as good as any Japanese equivalent that you could buy. And even some Maico riders would tell you that these carburetors can be superior to anything the Japanese can produce. Now as you know, these 1978 Maico motors had these rough sand-cast engine casings, and the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that Stewart didn't actually have a gear shifter fitted at this particular point, and that's because it was still on the treatment table when I grabbed these photos. But as a piston port 2-stroke motors go, these 440s were a great engine, reasonably reliable, easy to work on, and of course they had raw power in bucket loads if you wanted to hustle along the track in a hurry. Now once again Stewart has added this little upgrade to his new Maico and fitted these MDE wide style footrest. Now these naturally replaced those skinny originals that Maico fitted at the factory in 1978, but these do a great job on these old dirt bikes and give your feet much more support if you're one of these riders who tend to stand on the pegs a lot. Now the bike's exhaust system expansion chamber looks original, but it's certainly not. These are copies of the original Maico pipes, and this particular system is made by DEP Pipes in Maidstone in Kent in the UK. Now these, as you would expect, are identical to the Maico originals and are very good quality and are a good replacement for the old original pipes, which as you know are now virtually impossible to find these days. But nevertheless they do fit very well and are nearly indistinguishable from the 78 440 factory pipes. Now once again the exhaust tailpipe has been replaced by this DEP alloy tailpiece. Now this again could be classed as an upgrade because the original of course would have been made of steel and therefore much heavier. Now the bike's triple clamps have also been polished, and it looks like Stewart has added a nice pair of bar risers to lift that handlebar height and to suit his own particular riding style. Now the bike's front forks are your standard original Maico suspension units from 1978, although rather than leave them in this plain alloy, Stewart has had these powder coated also in this nice Ferrari type red colour. Now I mentioned Ferrari red because Stewart was heavily connected with Ferrari in Formula 1 a few years back, and he still repairs, builds and services those iconic Italian cars to this very day. So that's maybe another reason that Stewart's had the forks and brake back plates painted in his favourite colour. But for me personally, the colour certainly doesn't look out of place on this old Twinshock Scrambler, and you can see that this has been a top job and once again very high quality. Now of course these front brake back plates would have been originally just plain old bare alloy in 1978, but for me they certainly look a lot better with some of this lovely red paint on them. Now once again the bike's front and rear wheels are not the originals but are a brand new pair of SM Pro gold rims, and these were rebuilt with brand new heavy duty spokes, and they were laced back on to the now black powder coated hubs. Now the rear wheel and hub underwent the same treatment with new spokes and refurbished hub, along with a new set of sprockets and a brand new Regina drive chain. But it all looks good in this red and gold combination, and looks more than ready to start digging a few trenches on the start line. And the bike's rear hub and swing arms certainly look much better than they would have done in 1978, and the rear axle and the chain adjusters are all brand new parts. Now the rear suspension was another area that was upgraded, and Stewart has fitted a pair of these Dutch made Riger shocks which are very strong and excellent quality. Now Stewart swears by these suspension systems, and he uses similar parts on his other bigger and heavier CCM race bikes, so if they can cope with the pounding of a big British made 4-stroke, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem for this lighter German bike. Now the fuel tank's the bike's original, and this underwent a full-on restoration and was stripped of all its old paint, and the tank was then repainted with new colours and graphics. But again, for me personally, I still think these old alloy gas tanks that were fitted to the 78 and the 79 Magnums were some of the nicest that Maico ever designed. Of course, from 1980, Maico would then go on to fit plastic fuel cells to all of their future motocross machines. Now, the bike's seat, of course, is not the factory 1978 part, but in my opinion, this upgraded luxurious seat is certainly an improvement over the Maico original. Now, this beautifully designed seat is again the work of Transcal Automotive in Livingston here in Scotland. Now, their upholstery work on car and motorcycle seats are just unsurpassed when it comes to these items, and most of these are all handmade and stitched, and of course no graphics or stickers at the rear of this Maico seat. This logo is hand embroidered. Now again, Stewart has gone for quality Magura levers and covers on his Maico, and all the cables and the controls are all made by Venhill. Now the handlebars and grips are again Renthal items, and these are about as good as they come when you're talking about controls on a motocross bike. Now the 440 Maico also has a Swedish made Gunnar Gasser throttle to try and help control the many horses that are waiting to be unleashed from that Maico motor. But these Magura covers are a very good addition to the lever assemblies, and they do help keep dirt and water from entering the exposed parts of the control cables. Now, as far as I'm aware, all the bike's original plastics were just refurbished and then reused. Now, of course, there are now companies who specialise in making new these old faded plastic, and one company in particular, Holab Concepts, do specialise in this type of work, and Keith Ree is the man to speak to if you need something done. But nevertheless, after all is said and done, you've still got to admit that this is a very nice restoration job done by Stewart. Okay, it's not a fully original restoration as such because of the upgraded parts of the bike, and as I said at the start of the video, Stewart's not passing it off as a refurbished back to original bike. Much of the work that Stewart's done on the bike was just to make it better to ride on the track, and he'd no intentions whatsoever of turning it into a concourse winner to take to shows and the like. But this 440 Maico is first and foremost another race bike for Stewart, just like his other CCM bikes. But it just so happens that when Stewart builds a bike, he does it right, although he makes such a good job of it that people immediately assume that these bikes are just for show, and that is certainly not the case. This bike is first and foremost for racing. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of Stewart's 1978 440 Maico Magnum. Now don't forget, if these are the kind of old classic race bikes that you like to look at here on YouTube, then maybe you might consider subscribing to my channel. So once again, thanks for taking the time to tune in. So until next time, be safe and ride safe until we speak once more here on Classic Dirt Bike TV.